In 1966, the Beatles reached a creative peak, crafting some of the most innovative and influential music of their career. It was a year marked by profound artistic experimentation, personal transformation, and a growing sense of disillusionment with the pressures of fame. As the band moved away from live performances and embraced the studio as their creative playground, they produced an album that would change the course of music history, Revolver. The year began with the Beatles taking a break from their relentless schedule. By this time, the band members were becoming increasingly interested in new ideas and experiences. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr were all exploring different aspects of their personal lives, from spiritual journeys to artistic endeavors. This period of introspection and experimentation would heavily influence their music throughout the year. In April 1966, the Beatles returned to Abbey Road Studios to begin work on their next album. From the outset, it was clear that this album would be unlike anything they had done before. The band, along with producer George Martin and engineer Geoff Emerick, began to push the boundaries of what was possible in the studio. They experimented with new recording techniques, unconventional instruments, and complex arrangements, creating a sound that was revolutionary. The result was Revolver, released in August 1966. The album was a bold departure from their earlier work, showcasing the Beatles at their most experimental and adventurous. Each track on Revolver was a masterpiece in its own right, displaying the band's versatility and willingness to take risks. George Harrison's Taxman opened the album with biting social commentary, while Eleanor Rigby featured a haunting string arrangement that reflected Paul McCartney's growing interest in classical music. John Lennon's Tomorrow Never Knows was perhaps the most radical track on the album. With its hypnotic rhythm, backward tape loops, and surreal lyrics, it was a groundbreaking exploration of psychedelic music. The song was inspired by Lennon's interest in Eastern philosophy and his experiences with LSD, and it marked a significant shift in the band's musical direction. Other standout tracks on Revolver included Here, There and Everywhere, a delicate love song by McCartney, She Said, a Lennon composition inspired by an LSD trip, and Yellow Submarine, a whimsical track sung by Ringo Starr that became a hit in its own right. George Harrison contributed 3 songs to the album, including Love You Too, which featured traditional Indian instruments and showcased his deepening interest in Indian music and spirituality. Revolver was met with widespread critical acclaim and is now regarded as one of the greatest albums of all time. It topped the charts in both the UK and the US, and its influence on popular music cannot be overstated. The album's innovative use of the studio as an instrument in itself paved the way for countless artists and set a new standard for what could be achieved in popular music. Despite the success of Revolver, 1966 was also a year of increasing tension for the Beatles. The pressures of fame, the demands of constant touring, and the evolving musical tastes of the band members were beginning to take their toll. In July, the Beatles embarked on what would be their final tour, playing a series of concerts in Asia, Europe, and North America. The tour was marked by a series of controversies. In the Philippines, a misunderstanding led to a near riot when the Beatles inadvertently snubbed First Lady Imelda Marcos by not attending a planned reception. In the US, Lennon's comment that the Beatles were more popular than Jesus sparked outrage in the Bible Belt, leading to protests, record burnings, and threats against the band. By the time the Beatles played their final concert at Candlestick Park in San Francisco on August 29, 1966, they were exhausted and disillusioned with live performances. The chaotic atmosphere of their concerts, where they could barely hear themselves over the screaming fans, had become unbearable. The band members agreed that this would be their last live performance, marking the end of an era. Following the end of the tour, the Beatles retreated from the public eye and took time to reflect on their future. They were no longer the mop-topped pop stars of the early 1960s. They had evolved into mature, introspective artists. Each member of the band began to explore new creative avenues, both individually and collectively, setting the stage for the groundbreaking work that would follow. As 1966 came to a close, the Beatles were on the brink of another transformation. They had conquered the world of pop music and had now begun to push the boundaries of what rock music could be. The year had been one of innovation, experimentation, and change, a year that would ultimately lead to the creation of their next masterpiece, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The Beatles were no longer just a band, they were pioneers, charting new territory in the world of music and culture. There are thousands more great videos like this on the channel. Please take a look, share and subscribe, or visit the Bonswivit shop on eBay, which has over 250,000 rare and collectible items listed.